Hi, life can be a constant struggle, especially when financial worries are added to our daily difficulties. I know it's hard to make ends meet, but let me let you know that it's all your fault. Why? Because every day you're frying your brain. You're altering your focus, compromising your concentration, and causing your testosterone levels to decline. All this contributes to stifling your potential for success. In reality, most people have less attention span than a goldfish, and it's this daily battle that you face. The good news is that this means that, with a bit of discipline and work ethic, you're already ahead of 90% of the population. Before you even start, it's essential to understand that your ability to control your impulses is directly linked to your success or failure. If you can't control yourself, if you can't be disciplined, success is simply out of your reach. That's why it's imperative that you learn to control your impulses, and it all starts with desexualizing your brain. So that you're no longer subjugated by your primate brain, I'm going to present you with the 6 essential steps to desex your brain and regain control of your life. The key lies in mastering your mind, body, and life, which will ultimately lead you to success. Now, let's dive into the heart of the matter. Actually, desexualizing your brain has little to do with sex and a lot to do with something else. I'll come back to this point a little later in the video. For now, let's focus on the steps you need to take. The first step is to stop watching porn. First and foremost, it's imperative that you kick the habit. This may seem obvious, but 99% of young people have trouble stopping. I want to emphasize that watching porn is by far the worst way to sexualize your brain. Let me explain why. The problem isn't just the amount of time you devote to this activity. Sure, if you stopped, you might gain an extra hour a week, but that's a minor side effect compared to the main problem. In fact, porn profoundly alters your brain and steals your concentration. Don't take my words at face value. Just look at the results of scientific research. Numerous studies have established a link between porn use and the erosion of your prefrontal cortex. You know, that part of your brain that regulates your emotions, your actions, and most importantly, your impulse control and willpower. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. An extensive list of harmful side effects is associated with porn consumption. This is because porn use has similar repercussions on the brain to those observed with substance use. Porn is correlated with problems such as decreased concentration, increased anxiety, and depression. To make matters worse, porn is also associated with difficulties in long-term relationships, as well as impotence problems. In fact, an epidemic is affecting young men facing sexual problems such as erectile dysfunction, because their brains have been reprogrammed. This is unfortunate, because these young men have consumed so much porn that their neural pathways have literally been altered. In effect, they've conditioned themselves to experience arousal by watching the performances of others rather than experiencing them themselves. What's more, porn users admitted to being less satisfied with their lives compared to their non-porn consuming peers. Now, the second step to desexualizing your brain associates with stopping porn, and that's to stop pleasuring yourself. I understand that it's addictive and has become a norm these days, but there's nothing healthy or normal about it. It's not just because of the act itself, as deplorable as that is, but really, it's because of the consequences. Every time you indulge, your dopamine soars, signaling to your brain that you've accomplished what is supposed to be man's greatest goal, procreating. You're essentially telling your brain that you've done the most important thing of your day. Of course, you and I both know this isn't true, but the neurons activated in your brain don't understand it. That's why you get rewarded for it. And it's cheap dopamine, because you trick your own brain into providing you with dopamine you haven't earned. This is why your ability to concentrate and perform difficult tasks diminishes. How do you think the real world can compete with the dopamine and other chemical releases you get from doing what we evolved to do? Well, the answer is that it simply can't. No wonder you have trouble concentrating when your dopamine receptors are overstimulated. Everything else seems boring after you've accomplished this task, which is why you have to stop. Do you wonder why so many young men keep doing it? It's because they're addicted to cheap dopamine in the same way people get addicted to drugs. In fact, porn and masturbation addiction is one of the hardest to break because of the intense dopamine spike it provokes. Let's take a quick look at the data. If you eat a delicious burger or other carbohydrate-rich meal, your dopamine levels will increase by 100%. Now, if you smoke or take any other form of nicotine, your dopamine levels will increase by 200%. Porn and masturbation, on the other hand, boost your dopamine levels by more than 250%, just like sex. Here's the key difference. Porn and masturbation then drop your dopamine levels well below normal, and that's when those lethargic feelings arise. It's precisely the same dopamine curve you get with drugs. This really raises the question of how you can stop, and that's where it gets interesting. An addiction to porn and masturbation isn't actually rooted in anything sexual at all, and that brings us to the third stage of desexing your brain. They conducted a study to understand what causes these addictions, and the answer might surprise you. In reality, it wasn't any form of perversion, it wasn't childhood trauma, it wasn't an extraordinary libido. It was something much simpler, much more rudimentary: lack of meaning. In other words, if you don't have a purpose, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have something to strive for, then you're more likely to fall into these addictions. The good news is that it's fixable. Every man should have a purpose, a North Star that drives him forward. You simply need something better to do with your time than give in to your urges. What that something is will depend on the person. From a young age, we're taught that we need a good university education and a corporate job, as if that will somehow make us fulfilled. We both know that this is certainly not true. But don't worry, my friend. In my next few videos, I'll reveal how and why you were indoctrinated to believe this, and most importantly, I'll show you how to escape that indoctrination and regain your freedom. So, if you don't want to miss this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Understand this: we all need something to guide us. For some, it will be starting a business. For others, it will be something completely different. I can tell you that, personally, my North Star was to be able to take care of my mother and my loved ones. That's why I went into business, because I had that North Star to guide me. Honestly, without that North Star, I can confidently say I would have given up. Money isn't enough to get you ahead. You need that North Star, that why, that purpose. But even then, once you've got your aim, you can still slide. Why? Because there are triggers that make you do it. And that brings us to our fourth step to desexualizing your brain. Stop watching soft porn. Soft porn can be just as harmful as porn because it's ubiquitous. Everywhere you look, there are half-naked girls. You scroll endlessly on TikTok and Instagram, and the algorithm is reinforced by your desire to look at these girls. That's why I'm asking you to stop following all the models on Instagram, to stop following all the girls on TikTok who do their little dance, because they're sapping your concentration, destroying your future. It may seem tiny to you, but it's not. Most of the time, you don't just decide to watch porn. There's a trigger. That's why the best way to stop porn is to eliminate the triggers that keep you watching it. That means you have to stop watching soft porn too. Whenever the algorithm shows you half-naked girls, just click "Not interested" to train the algorithm not to show you those things. Listen up, the best case scenario is for you to simply stop TikTok and Instagram together. In reality, you don't need to look at girls or anything else if it doesn't directly help you with your business. But in any case, the next step you need to take to desexualize your brain is to focus inward, not outward. The biggest problem with sexualizing your brain comes from changes in your dopamine system. Sexualizing your brain interferes with your ability to do hard work, because your brain becomes so accustomed to cheap dopamine. That's why the next step requires you to learn delayed gratification. Instead of constantly looking outward for stimulation and dopamine, you need to learn to look inward. You might ask yourself what this really means. It means that 90% of people get their so-called happiness by doing fun things, whether those things are as sinister as porn or as innocent as chocolate. But if you really want to succeed, that can't be you. I'm not saying you should cut out every source of dopamine in your life, but you really need to think about which ones help you and which ones hurt you. Over the years, I've regularly done a dopamine detox. This is where, for a certain amount of time, usually between 20 and 72 hours, you do nothing. No food, no phone, not even books or music, and certainly no porn. Just complete quiet. You have to get used to finding peace without these external stimuli, because the goal is for you to be so fulfilled by your work that you'll eventually get those same dopamine releases from doing hard things. Dopamine is nothing more than a reward system. It's the way your brain has evolved to reinforce behaviors that will increase your chances of survival. That's why sex gets your dopamine up so high, because without procreation, we wouldn't exist. But in today's world, social media and food have hijacked those same systems. And that's why it's up to you to regain control over them. So stop looking for cheap dopamine on the outside and turn your gaze inward instead. That's how you desexualize your brain and align your actions with your goals. Now, the last thing you need to do is stop chasing women and build yourself first. Listen, you'll never really be able to focus inward if you're constantly chasing women. If you're texting this girl, meeting that other girl, all the while thinking about another girl, you'll never be focused. That's how you don't desexualize your brain. That's exactly why I always say you have to stop chasing women and build yourself first. The best part is that when you build yourself into a man of substance, women will inevitably come to you. But until you reach that level, chasing women is just a massive waste of time. Unless it's your first girl, unless you know perfectly well that this girl will be your future wife. But if that's not the case, it's a waste of time for two reasons. The first is that the quality of women you can get at the beginning of your career is nothing compared to those you can get later on. You see, women date men who are higher up the social hierarchy, which means that better quality women will inevitably end up with better quality men. That's why you have to spend time shaping yourself to be the best possible version of yourself. And I'm not just talking about money. By the way, the second reason it's a waste of time is that if you somehow manage to get a high-quality girl, the amount of effort and time it will take you is enormous. You really have to analyze the opportunity cost here, because dating a girl, spending €100 or a few $100s trying to impress her, creates far greater complications. I'm not saying you have to be a weird social person, but you have to get your priorities in order. Look, just like they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask first on the plane, you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet before you let someone else into your life. Because, at the end of the day, dating is a huge distraction. And when you're just starting out in your business or career, you'll need all the time and focus you can muster. No stage of the journey is more difficult than the first, which is why you need undivided attention. Look, after all, you just need 1 to 3 years of pure concentration, and then you can live a normal life again. But you have to be willing to make that sacrifice. Let me tell you something, if you're constantly thinking about this girl and that girl, and which girl to see tonight, there's no way you can desex your brain and channel your concentration into what really matters. Once you channel your focus to what really matters, everything else will fall into place. So focus on yourself first. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and join me in the next video.